since we last talked that you came out with. Really, really good. And I also know that there's probably some folks that may not be too happy about where they are on the scorecard. And so I just wanted to have you on and just kind of see if there has been any fallout or criticism directed at your organization.
Yes, quite a bit. I actually did not anticipate people being as angry with us as they have been, just because we published how they voted. And we gave them a grade based on whether they voted with us or not. And, boy, I tell you what, it lit them up. And it's just like, back when I was a high school history teacher, the people that made good grades, man, they loved it. It was a great report card. They were happy. And the ones that didn't get as good a grade as they thought they should have gotten, then they start finger pointing. It's like, this is a dumb evaluation, or you got it in for me. You're just trying to mess me up, or whatever. And the truth is, we have no vested interest in giving anybody a bad grade. In fact, just like being a teacher in a classroom, you'd celebrate if everybody made a good grade. If everybody made an A, you'd be happy. And the truth is, a lot of people made really good scores, and some didn't get as good scores as they thought. And others looked over at some other guy and said, well, I'm more conservative than he is. How did he get a better grade than I did? Well, the truth is, he must have voted better. And that's the stark reality.
Mm. Yeah, and, your organization, the Family Council Action, you guys have been doing this. I said this, I guess, on Friday. For 30 years, you have been, you've kind of known what your convictions are, Jerry, personally, for a long time, and I'm sure that shapes the agenda of the Family Council. Is that right?
Well, of course, we've always been pro-life. We have always been in favor of education reform. We've always been in favor of traditional marriage and, these other family core issues. And, of course, there are issues that connect with that, like the whole marijuana issue and how it impacts children and families. The expansion of alcohol, even, it affects children and families. And certainly how we treat people who are residents of our nursing homes. And some of the lawsuit reform, so-called reform measures that are out there. So these family issues go in a number of directions. We go where the battle is. And people say, well, why are you over there? Because that's where the battle is. That's where the threat is. And so we're there. And so we go to the legislature knowing exactly where we stand on these issues. And, we've evaluated lawmakers as far as publishing their votes for 2 or 3 sessions now, but this is the first time we ever put a grade on there. And there were 25 bills in the House, 25 in the Senate. You get 4 points for each good vote. 4 times 25 is 100. 90 to 100 is an A. Anything below 60 is an F. And we had people make all kinds of grades. And we put them up there the way they earned them. And I tell people over and over, I said, this is not my grade. This is their grade. I didn't vote. This is how they voted. And this is how they voted on the things that are important to us. May not be important to them. Might not be important to some other group. But this is how they voted on things that were important to us.
Yeah.
People can look at that and make whatever decision they want to make about it.
Oh yeah, and it's pretty. That's really a great point. And yet they're getting better out of shape. I think they're getting better out of shape. Feel free to respond or to this any way you want. So you mentioned some issues there: expansion of alcohol, marijuana. These are things that are important to you. But also, the Family Council has been known, like you said, you've always been pro-life, and that's been something that I think a lot of people agree on, or at least they say they agree on. It seems to me there are some people, though, that just wish you would kind of abandon some of those issues that are important to you so that their scores would have gone up,
Well, yes, but didn't we all in school at times say, man, I wish I hadn't had to take that test. I wish we hadn't had to do that chapter. That was hard. Being a lawmaker is not easy, and you have to make hard decisions. You have to make hard votes. That's why you got elected. And so, yes, I feel their pain, as some people might say, but at the same time, we all have to step up.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program today. My name is Paul. Thank you so much for being with us. We can't do the program without you listening every single day, and so we really appreciate it. The phone number to call or text, 870-275-9799, and this is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We have a great show for you. At the bottom of this hour, we will be checking in with Jan Morgan for our Patriots of Act 746 segment. We're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, Jan Morgan and her kickoff event for her listening tour. Last week, of course, she announced that she was forming an exploratory committee to run for Arkansas governor. That would mean she would be challenging Asa Hutchinson. So we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about what's come down the pike, the new enhanced carry regulations, meaning if you want to go through all the new red tape to get the enhanced carry license, what the government's now asking you to do, it's quite it's just staggering that Republicans are in control. That's all I can say. It's absolutely staggering. It doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm going to start with here just a prediction. Folks, whenever the establishment in this state, and I know this from history, whenever the establishment in this state starts to feel the pressure from you, there is something that I would describe as a frenzy that starts to develop. And this frenzy is, you could call it circling the wagons, but they get worked up, they work themselves up, and they end up, in one way or another, influencing the media and influencing even conservative legislators who have good voting records. Let me just say this, whenever the establishment actually shows their cards, and their cards are not good, and they telegraph that they're nervous, they telegraph that the opposition's making them nervous, sometimes the effect that has is to make other people who you wouldn't it's to make others nervous. And the only reason I'll say this is because it's just, I'm gauging this on experience. When this program and Conduit for Action was telling you that Medicaid expansion under Obamacare was not going away, even though Asa and Jim Hendren were saying that it was, a similar frenzy happened. Because we were saying, they're not actually doing what they say they're going to do, and we were even speculating that the stated goal of getting rid of Medicaid expansion is not really their goal, thereby revealing them to be deceivers, to be actively deceiving the public. I believe a similar frenzy is taking place when it comes to the tax farce, when it comes to this task farce on taxes. And the newest, we covered the John Brummett article yesterday, and he's got another one out. And this confirms to me that the reason that, you know, with all the back channels and everything else and the people that contact this show and people who contacted anonymously or off the record, the reason there's a frenzy is because the establishment is nervous because this program is growing, number one, and you have Conduit, who has a substantial reach of people with their stuff. And you know what the message is? This task force is going to actually raise your taxes. Let's quit dancing around this. They're going to get a net tax increase, more revenue from the people, more revenue supporting the government growth to support all these programs. And that's what I've been telling you. That's what Conduit is saying. We have the recent legislative session and little mini battles to back that up. Military retiree tax cut is one of them. We now know that's a $5.9 million net tax increase. Over 2 years, it's like $8 million. Over 3 years, it's like $8 million. Yet they call it a tax cut, but it's actually a tax increase. That's a complete misdirection and deception of the people by Republicans who are supposed to be conservative. So this similar frenzy. So what I'm telling you is the reason they're getting upset is because there is another narrative that is, and look, they had their little, okay, so we talked about this on Monday or Tuesday. They kicked off their little grand opening of the Republican Party of Arkansas, the building. They opened their new building for the RPA. And so you know what that meant, right? That meant that everybody who's somebody, or not, you know, that meant that you had a lot of people in charge who have power that were in the one place, and you know what they were doing? They were talking. And you know what they were talking about? They were talking about the fact that the Republican Party of Arkansas doesn't really have the moral high ground right now, and they're not executing the platform. You think they were talking about that? They probably weren't talking about that specifically, that they were probably talking about the detractors who are not just, I guess, I don't know, they're not signing up for the, you know, to be the publicist that the Republican Party of Arkansas wants. I'm not a publicist for the Republican Party of Arkansas, if you can't tell. These guys are working against the very agenda they claim to represent. Now, case in point. So hang on, let me stop. That's the frenzy, okay? And I haven't seen it like this since the last time we were telling people the truth that nobody wanted to hear. And now to hear it is on taxes. And so I'm really worried that that combined with the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette editorial piece talking about cuts and how they don't want cuts and how, you know, essentially they were just saying revenue neutral tax cuts where, you know, the money's still coming out of our pocket to fund the government, but they're going to, you know, it's a shell game. They're just going to shift how it comes out. That's not a tax cut. Go read the letter Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin wrote to the tax farce, which is, by the way, it's becoming more and more of a farce. They hire liberal tax consultant Randy Bauer, who says that on his Twitter feed, tax cuts are not tax reform. So let me just go over this article real quick. This is John Brummett's article from today. His opinion piece. It's titled Dysfunction's Dirty Pool. And he starts out, so there's some real gems here by Mr. John Brummett. Because he certainly, I think, confirms the nerve that we hit in all the time. And that's the, I don't know, the family ties, the blood being thicker than politics type situation we have going on here, because it starts out, the Hutchinson-Hendren dynasty in Arkansas finds itself under increasing attack from the far right. Interesting. This is don't you find this interesting that John Brummett decides to write an article about how Jim Hendren and Asa Hutchinson are being attacked by the far right? I wonder who that could be. The development raises the specter of a local increment of the Republican dysfunction now raging on the national level between the party's so-called mainstream and hard-right Bannonites. Yeah, because the party's mainstream was responsible for electing Donald Trump. Because obviously that's true, right? Yeah, because the mainstream really, they were huge fans of Donald Trump, right? The development raises the specter of an increment. That's a sufficient hedge, don't you think? Okay, here we go. Governor Asa Hutchinson. Now listen to what Brummett writes about Governor Asa Hutchinson. Asa Hutchinson, conservative enough to prosecute Bill Clinton's impeachment, lead major federal agencies for George W. Bush, and earn the hatred of Democrats, has performed the office of governor with center-right pragmatism. Sometimes conservative principles get in the way of pragmatism. You know who said that? Asa's nephew, Jim. I believe that piece was written by John Brummett as well. So Asa's conservative because he led the impeachment of Bill Clinton, or prosecuted it. Didn't really, but he was the, and they did that because he was from Arkansas at the time. So that was a political play there. And he worked for George Bush. So he works for George Bush, and he prosecuted Bill Clinton in the impeachment, and so he's conservative. He has conservative credentials, right? And then he goes, he's earned the hatred of Democrats. Where's that hatred now, John? I mean, you're a Democrat, John, and from what I can tell, you love Asa a lot. Listen, and then he says this is the center-right pragmatism. He has toned down an anti-gay bill. Well, you know what the anti-gay bill he's referring to is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which was a complete abandonment of conservatives and the representation of the people, the attempted representation of the people. He resisted a bathroom bill. Clarification. Boys should go into men's rooms and women should go into ladies' rooms. He capped a tax cut bill and held out for additional concealed carry training for persons newly authorized to carry guns on college campuses. Isn't it funny how, the way you phrase something. Now, obviously, we're not going to get back into the whole gun debacle because I'm telling you right now, Asa did everything he could to put more roadblocks into your Second Amendment rights. Now, then he writes about Jim Hendren, State Senator Jim Hendren of Gravette. The next president pro temp of the Senate is the governor's nephew, the son of the governor's sister. He's a fighter pilot, military conservative who has moved from what once qualified as the far right towards pragmatism. So he says that Jim Hendren has moved to the left. He's moved from the right, which would mean that Jim Hendren has moved to the left. Do you see here, John Brummett is being honest, and he is praising these guys as moving to the left, as being leftists. He has, let's see, he cited along the philosophical continuum to help Uncle Asa. While helping Uncle Asa, he seems to have come to value pragmatic problem-solving over right-wing flame throwing. Now, keep in mind how John Brummett described the Arkansas voters yesterday, which are overweight. He described us as, just having a lot of resentment towards the state of Arkansas voting for President Trump over Hillary. He keeps going here. Hang on a second. He writes, I believe I can safely say that he has come to accept the role of a party in power as different from the role of a minority party lobbing grenades. And that sounds just like what Mitch McConnell's philosophy is, which would, again, line up with the entire goalposts, the entire field of battle that John Brummett talks about at the beginning of this piece. He sees a legislator's role as different if he is in a tiny majority under a Democratic governor than if his beloved uncle becomes the Republican governor and he is in a heavy Republican majority. In the latter circumstance, he seems to accept that he must take responsibility to balance budgets and keep the state from embarrassing itself to the national and international business community. So what does that mean? Gosh, John Brummett is confirming what I've been saying for almost 2 weeks now. I started it on Friday. The Republican establishment is embarrassed of the people who sent them there. They are embarrassed of the people who send representatives there. They're embarrassed of the opinions. They are embarrassed that you would like your religious freedom. They're embarrassed that you would, they're embarrassed of the idea. They don't want to have to defend the idea that a cake maker shouldn't have to be forced to participate in what they consider to be a religious ceremony. They're embarrassed of the idea that their constituents may want some clarification in this time where people can just demand that the entire society support someone who is a biological male but feels like they're a female and is demanding that everybody else go along with the charade. So they're embarrassed by this. And they don't want to have to explain to Walmart and the corporatists that they want to represent the people that sent them there. It's a real crisis when you think about it. A lack of representation. It's very similar to the same things that we faced, in the 18th century. When you think about just the complete lack of representation because of outside influence. Influence that's beyond our control. And even John Brummett knows what he's done. Listen, he writes, if I've ruined Hendren on his right flank by suggesting that he is practical and responsible, a grown-up, then I apologize. I have no need to apologize. You're saying what I say every single day. Lately, Hendren has been in a mild Twitter debate with a right-wing group, Conduit for Action, John Brummett writes, to the right of the Koch brothers, that issues legislator report cards on the purity of conservative voting records. He disputes the criteria for assigning conservative purity. He's seen the same vote contribute to a B and a D, depending on who is doing the scoring. So John has clearly talked to Jim here. Conduit's latest public salvo falls somewhere between fascinating and hilarious, and I simply must tell you about it. Now, here's where John Brummett, in my opinion, goes on to be misleading, if outright false. He writes, it raises guilt by association. It suggests that a liberal can't compile accurate or honest data. It seems to say consultants' reports are like the news media in the way the far right wing views both. They're fake, that is, if you don't like what they say. He goes on, to these people, a consulting firm with a staff member who posted a pro-Obama, anti-Trump tweet can't compile trusted data comparing states on what and how they tax and what and how they exempt from taxation and on what might be the dynamically scored economic effects of this tax or that exemption. Now, let me just stop right here. First of all, Randy Bauer, for a fact, has recommended policy already in the meetings. That's the first point. He's even suggested that Arkansas wouldn't want to be number one in business climate. He did this at the meeting. Arkansas doesn't need to be number one in business climate because that would be bad for our citizens. He is espousing opinions, not compiled data. He's espousing opinions from an ideological perspective. That ideological perspective, at least on paper, has been rejected by the people of Arkansas because we voted for Republicans over Democrats. He goes on. First, Conduit accused Hutchinson of being a tax raiser on this basis. There was a push in the last session to exempt military retirement pensions from income taxes. Listen to the defense here. Hutchinson had already drawn up his budget, which included income tax reductions. He said he wanted the loss of the revenue from the military retirement exemption offset by other revenue-generating measures to keep his budget balanced. Conduit considers that to be calling for tax increases. It isn't. It's making a budget that includes a tax cut and then wanting to supply the rules of addition and subtraction if someone tries to change the best-laid plan. Okay, so he says that it's not a tax increase. I'm sorry. If you have to create a brand new tax. First point, you have to create a brand new tax in that bill to get your money back, which was a tax on digital downloads. That is a new tax, and that is a tax increase. Second point, according to the Bureau of Legislative Research, Joe, go over there and pull this up. Bureau of Legislative, I think it's on the far right. No pun intended. There. According to the Bureau of Legislative Research, zoom into the down, what I've highlighted. See there? Scroll down. According to the Bureau of Legislative Research, Act 141 to amend taxation of military retirement, candy, soft drinks, and digital downloads is going to have a net increase in year one of $3 million, year two of $5.9 million. So we're talking $8.9 million increase for a tax cut bill, a, quote, tax cut bill. It's not a tax cut. They got more money from us. So, I mean, if you're going to have, honestly, seriously, if you're gonna run this protectionist, I don't know if this article is going to show up as part of a political contribution on Asa Hutchinson's reelection campaign expenditure reports. I'm not sure, but I will tell. But I'll tell you this: if you're going, to at least be factual. Okay, the criticism of the military retirement is valid. The criticism of that bill is valid on several fronts. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Watch Paul live at paulharrell.com. It's free and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because the Liberty Machine never sleeps.
So, our board operator, Joe, he was reading this article as we were going, and he's noticed a pivot in writing technique or points of what John Brummett discussed. Joe, what was your point there?
Yeah, early in the article, John Brummett says that Asa and Jim are both on the right, and then later pivots to defend them in their actions. No one on the left does that unless they know that the person that they're defending or the person they're talking about is on their side, regardless if it's like out in the open or in secret. John Brummett knows that Asa and Jim are on the left.
Yeah, so it's that's a very good side. They're on the same side. John Brummett, Jim Hendren, Asa Hutchinson are on the same side from a policy standpoint. And you could call it Republican pragmatism, or you could call it being a conservative Democrat, I guess. This ridiculous notion of conservative Democrats. But it's essentially the same thing. Is that what we've traded? Have we traded liberal conservative Democrats, which is a strange phrase, for pragmatic Republicans? Which goes to show you that's why this whiteboard makes an incredible amount of sense. The Democrats are still in control in Arkansas today.
No, pragmatic Republicans and conservative liberals are the same thing. It's interchangeable.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's synonymous. We're going to be right back here in just a moment with Jan Morgan, and we're going to get to our Patriots of Act 746 segment. Don't go anywhere, folks. I'm telling you, the Republican establishment, they know you're listening. They know you're getting truth. They know you're getting information they don't want you to have. They are very worried right now. And they're worked up into a frenzy. They're trying to pull as many people as they can, to their aid. They're trying to protect this. I don't know. It's just like it's this oligarchy that they're trying to protect, power structure they're trying to maintain. We've got to go back in just a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. Paul Harvey. Good day.
Values, your ideals. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is our weekly Patriots of Act 746 segment. They are on a mission to educate Arkansans about our gun laws, specifically Act 746 and constitutional carry, permitless carry here in the state. It is your right to defend yourself. Hey, joining us now to talk more about this, we have Jan Morgan is back with us. Jan, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Paul, always a pleasure.
Yes. So I want to start Before we get to some Act 746 stuff, I'd like to start just talking about, of course, last week, the huge news, and we discussed it last week as well. You're announcing an exploratory committee for a potential run at governor. And you had a kickoff event of your listening tour at Alma, and I played a lot of that on Monday. Just tell me what were your thoughts on that reception?
Oh, Paul, the reception has been overwhelming. And what has been exciting to me, besides just the grassroots folks that have responded to the whole idea of this exploratory committee, is the number of Republicans, conservative Republicans across the state. And Republican Party chairs from a number of counties are now stepping up and saying, Jan Morgan, we want you to come speak to our Republican Party in our county. That's exciting because, as you know, we had a little issue before we ever announced an exploratory committee. We had an issue where I was scheduled to speak at a number of Republican Party events, and phone calls were being made and emails being sent to persuade and strong-arm Republican Party chairs to not allow me to speak. And, in fact, Craighead County uninvited me after they had promoted me as a speaker. So, with all that drama behind us now, I'm glad to see that Republican Party chairs are stepping up to the plate and saying, you know what, we want to hear what this lady has to say and why she feels that the Republican Party is in a crisis mode at this point in our state, and what we need to do to save it and what we need to do to save this state and make it a better place to live and work. So the response has been overwhelming. I was excited because at that event, the Patriots of Act 746 event, which is a kickoff to my listening tour, there were people, Paul, who had driven 3 and 4 hours to get there. And Republican Party chairs from 2 different counties who drove long distances who came to basically hear what I had to say, and I think they were trying to decide at that point when they came, are we going to let this woman speak to our group? And overwhelmingly, both of those county chairs came up to me afterward and said, we want to help.
Yeah.
So, yes, we want you to come talk. So that was exciting.
That's
great.
Day. That's great. And I know in November you're going to be at the Mississippi County Republican Party meeting there. And,
yes.
and of course, we uncovered an email from one of the men in the governor's office that was pressuring folks to uninvite you there as well. And so, this is certainly, I was mentioning earlier, some of the news that we've been covering on this program, I believe, is kind of working the establishment up into a frenzy. And I obviously think that your potential candidacy is certainly fueling that as well.
Well, Paul, what we're seeing, not only in Arkansas, but across the nation, and it is so exciting that conservatives are finally realizing, they're stepping up to the plate and realizing that the establishment has been the problem. And that's why Steve Bannon stepped off the Trump administration and Dr. Sebastian Gorka to get out there, because they realized in order to get the people's agenda accomplished in D.C., not Trump's agenda, but the people's agenda. And remember, Trump is simply there because of the people. And so in order to get that done, they realized being in D.C. is not where they needed to be. They need to be out in the states, finding and promoting the League of Extraordinary Candidates, real people who know what it's like to live and work in respective states, to run for state offices, because we need to get the right people in elected positions so that we can continue to forward the people's agenda. So that's exciting, and I think people in this state, we're getting phone calls from all kinds of folks across the state. So it is a very exciting time, and things are looking great, Paul.
So I love the idea, though, because the idea that you had county members, county Republican members or chairmen travel to hear you, I feel like that is so important, because, that's really where I feel like the local people who are controlling the party's agenda there at the local level, and how that can all unite and can really reflect. And when you were at the Alma event, I listened to most of your speech. I played most of your speech. I listened to all of it. You did recount just how you got to the statewide stage, what went on down in Little Rock about the Second Amendment, and how all of that happened with the gun bills and everything else. And I just wondered, do you think that there was some in that audience that had never heard that story, and they were like, wow, there are real problems down there when we have Republicans who are not acting like the platform?
Exactly. Actually, not going much further than not acting, but they're actually not voting the Republican Party platform. And our best, most conservative legislators are the ones that's why we're in a crisis mode, because those are the people that either now have opposition candidates running against them as Republicans, because those people dared to buck Governor Asa Hutchinson's agenda, and actually those legislators tried to represent their constituency. And as a result of representing their constituency versus the agenda of Governor Hutchinson, now they have opposition in the primary elections. And some of them are even talking about not running again. One of our strongest conservatives, based on his voting record, is saying, I can't get anything accomplished, which is why I never really looked seriously at running for senator or state representative, because I would run into the same problem that the rest of our conservative, strong Republican legislators are running into, and that is they can't beat the establishment. So what I want to do is get in there and see if we, the people, if there are enough people in this state who are serious enough about sending a message to the establishment that we are fed up, that we're tired of politics as usual, that we're tired of being told that you're going to repeal regulatory regulations, and instead we're getting more regulatory burdens. Republicans who are promising us tax cuts, and instead we're getting tax increases. I mean, it's just people are tired of that, and they're starting to pay attention now. And so, I'm glad that people are engaging. What we're going to be looking for is to see how many people in this state are really serious about change, to make that final decision about whether or not we're going to pull the trigger on this.
Very good. We're talking with Jan Morgan, a potential Republican candidate for governor. So you had a great event in Alma, and then you hopped over into Oklahoma for a minute, right? What was that about?
Well, Paul, that I've been on the national stage fighting as a national spokesperson of Citizens for Trump on a wide variety of issues. People who think I'm just a single-issue candidate are misinformed, and that's, of course, what the opposition wants people to think about me, that I'm a single-issue candidate or potential candidate, but that's not the case. I was fighting as a citizen spokesperson, national spokesperson of Citizens for Trump, defending candidate Trump on every issue imaginable on the national stage, as well as, once he became president, defending him and his positions and policies as president on the national level. So that is what I've been doing, and what I've tried to let the folks in Alma know, and the folks around the state know, is that we have a lot of problems, and we're going to address them effectively and quickly, and we're trying to get the word out to the people about where we stand on all those issues. The Oklahoma thing was because of my past. It's a commitment that I made 6 months ago to help grow the grassroots Second Amendment organization in that state. Because, Paul, here's what we're finding out. National organizations like the National Rifle Association, National Association for Gun Rights, Gun Owners of America, the Second Amendment Foundation, all those organizations have their merit in general and in a number of ways. But what we've discovered nationally is that the most effective 2A organizations, or organizations that are within the state with grassroots membership. And what we've seen in Alabama with a group called Bama Carry, and in Arizona with a group called Citizens Defense League, made up of grassroots citizens, that now in states like that where the citizens are the major lobbying power instead of some national organization, now legislators in those states are much more afraid of those state organizations and bucking those state organizations than they are about some NRA rating.
Wow.
And that's good, and that's where it needs to be.
Yeah.
That's where it needs to be, the power to the people of the state. And so that's what I was talking to the folks in Oklahoma about, is generating and growing their organization. Like Patriots of 746 Group, Paul, we're already over 10,000 members strong and growing every day. And when you get a group that state legislators start worrying about where their standing is with your state group of grassroots people, then you've got some serious lobbying power with the people in control.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I completely agree with that. And, the great folks at Patriots of Act 746, and they have done a tremendous job on the state level all the way back in 2013 when Act 746 was passed, and then it became law in July later that year, and they started getting the word out. They started exercising their Second Amendment rights, and now we have a situation where we are closer to realizing, we just need Asa and other people to say, hey, we have constitutional carry in Arkansas. They don't want to do that because they're protecting the money that goes to the Arkansas State Police.
Exactly, and I asked the governor. I asked him multiple times in my one-on-one meeting with him. Well, I say one-on-one. There were actually 5 or 6, 7 other guys at the table there. But it was my confrontation with Governor Asa Hutchinson and asking him to please clarify to the people of the state what we already know, and that is that we have constitutional carry in this state. And he admitted to me that we do, but he did not, the only excuse he could come up with for not just stepping out there and saying this to the people is it was about the money that the Arkansas State Police make off the concealed handgun licensing program. And, that's just, that is so troublesome, Paul, that you've got a Republican governor who doesn't want to stand up to the people in the state and simply say, look, folks, we do not want to discriminate against financially disadvantaged people. We want everyone in this state who is a citizen of this state to know and understand that you don't have to get a permission slip from state police in order to carry a gun to defend your life.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
He won't do it.
So,
he won't do it.
Yeah, and he won't. You're exactly right. So, Jan, I want to talk just a little bit about this new enhanced carry license. We now have the state police training and everything that you're going to have to do if you want to comply with the new red tape, the rules and regulations to carry in prohibited places. And I've covered extensively. I know you've covered it. That entire process was so flawed, and I believe a lot of politicians, it was just like you said, but the governor. They just didn't want to make him veto anything that really would have really accented and confirmed the Second Amendment rights that we already have. But specifically with these rules, I'd like to get your reaction to this. I have this in front of me. I give my consent and release to the Arkansas State Police to conduct a thorough investigation into my qualifications to be a license to carry a concealed handgun for any records or reports held by any physician, medical professional, medical facility, mental institution, private, state, or federal, or for any law enforcement agency to furnish detailed information from the records. So is this new with the enhanced carry that people, if they want to do this, have to turn over their medical history?
Paul, there are so many new things that are coming down the pike with the enhanced carry. It is a convoluted mess, just like it was in the whole bill process, as it went from one stage to another stage to another stage, and amendments kept being added and changed, and it moved around. It is like our whole concealed handgun licensing program in this state. It is a complicated mess, when all we need is for the governor to announce what we already know so that the citizens don't have to worry about this and don't have to be confused, to just say we have constitutional carry. Here's the problem with what you just read. That is going to be, people have to sign off. When you want a concealed handgun license in the state of Arkansas, you have to sign that, giving state police permission. And that's not just for the enhanced carry, Paul. That's for the regular concealed carry license.
Wow.
You have to give them access to your medical records. So what that means, Paul, is that if you have ever, let's say you lost a loved one, you had a death in the family, and you were depressed, and you went to your doctor and said, look, I need an antidepressant. I need something to get me through this period. And you were temporarily prescribed an antidepressant, or whatever. They're going to have access to that and can use that as an excuse to deny you a license. Now, here's the problem with that. If you submit an application for a concealed handgun license and you're denied, then not only are you denied in this state, but let's say you decide, okay, I want to get a license from the state of Arizona or the state of Florida. One of the questions on their questionnaire is, have you ever been rejected for a concealed handgun license in any state? You see?
Yeah.
So here all of a sudden, so what I tell people is this, and I tell everybody who comes to my facility and wants to take my defensive pistol class, I just say, just so you know, yes, you can take my class and I'll give you a certificate of training for a concealed handgun license in the state of Arkansas. However, as an Arkansas citizen, and I want people to listen to this, as a citizen of Arkansas, you can submit an application to the state of Florida, the state of Arizona, the state of Virginia, or the state of Utah for a concealed handgun license. As a non-resident of those states, the price is less than half of what Arkansas State Police charges, and yet your license from one of those states is good in the state of Arkansas. It's recognized. So not only can you get a license cheaper from one of those states, but you don't have to worry about giving a state police organization a permission slip to go and investigate your entire medical history and your entire background.
Wow.
So, that's one of the things that people need to keep in mind. And also, it is better to not submit an application for a license and give the state police access to your medical records rather than just, open carry or concealed carry without a license. Because we have constitutional carry. Constitutional carry means that you don't have to have a permission slip. And that's what we're trying, as Patriots of Act 746 group is trying to do, is educate people that they don't have to have that permission slip. They don't have to have it. And you don't even have to be a citizen of this state. Once you cross over in the state line of Arkansas, as a citizen of any state, you can carry a gun in this state. We get a lot of visitors here in Hot Springs that come to my gun range, and they're shocked to find out that they don't have to have an Arkansas license or have to have a concealed handgun license to carry a gun in the state of Arkansas. And that's the way it should be. Actually, that's the way it should be nationally.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And what's interesting, you know, about the situation, if Governor would come out, Asa Hutchinson, and clarify this, it would also help law enforcement because, you know, you still have, you know, for the most part, the prosecutors get the message because if somebody gets arrested for carrying a weapon illegally, the prosecutors are dropping the charges because they know they can't prove
they can't do anything about it.
Right. But then you still have intermittently, you have an arrest here and arrest there, you know, where they're just not enforcing the law accurately. The law enforcement isn't. And so it would really be nice if somebody at the top would set the record straight of what the law actually says.
And that's one of the areas that I got really crossways with Governor Hutchinson, and our meeting became very contentious because I said to him, Governor, I'm giving you a chance to be a hero to the people. Please, as a Republican governor, step out there and tell them about their constitutional right in this state. What a wonderful thing. And then when he brought up the state police and the money issue, I said, but Governor, there are people in this state who are still going to go to state police for a concealed handgun license, not because they need the permission slip, but because when you go to buy a gun, having that concealed handgun license cuts out the NICS background check. You simply, pass that license across the desk, they sign off on your paperwork, and you're out of there. And it also allows you, when you go into other states who don't have constitutional carry, it allows you to carry a gun in those states because not all states have constitutional carry. Mm-hmm. So those are reasons that people are still going to get a license, but I just try to remind people in Arkansas, unless the state police lower the rate, they can get a license from Arizona, Florida, and you can go online. Go online to do that. Virginia, Utah. Yeah. Those are 4 I know of that are reciprocal in the state of Arkansas. It's good in Arkansas, but you don't have to pay an exorbitant fee, and you don't have to go through getting your whole medical history exposed to state police.
Jan Morgan, I think I need to come to Hot Springs and I need to take your class. That's what I think I need to do.
I can tell you definitely need to come to Hot Springs and take my class. I will teach you how to shoot like a girl. Which is a good thing.
Yeah, I know. I've read about that because, women typically don't grow up, playing cowboys and Indians and learning bad habits before they actually hold a real gun. So at least that's what I've heard.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Well, I don't know about how many bad habits you have that I would have to undo, but I have not had to tell anyone that they were hopeless. So there's hope for you, Paul.
Well, I'll be the guy. Trust me. I'll be the one. It's like, well, you're hopeless. Well, we can meet back here and discuss it. Jan Morgan, I appreciate it. Potential Republican candidate for governor. We will do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
All righty. Folks, we got to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields 2 beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office, and second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist health care program. So, The remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody.
Excellent interview with Jan Morgan as usual. I got to tell you, this whole thing, and I did fail to mention that when I told you that at the beginning of this program, the beginning of the hour, when I told you that the frenzy that I'm seeing among the Republican establishment is very reminiscent. It reminds me of what this program did and what Conduit did by telling people the truth about Obamacare Medicaid expansion, and what Republicans did in Arkansas in your name. Went against the platform, and everyone got worked up. They started freaking out. They started circling the wagons, and it was because we were telling people the truth, and we have been right. We have been proven historically right that what Asa and what Jim Hendren said was wrong. It was deceptive. It misled the people at the very least, because no one's called me yet and told me that Medicaid expansion ended in Arkansas. Nobody's called me yet, and he said it would if we just followed him. So, this is deja vu all over again when it comes to the task force on taxes to try to recommend tax cuts. Of course, we have now been saying, look, I think they're going to increase taxes. I don't really think this is going to be – they're going to claim they cut income taxes, but they're going to raise taxes everywhere else. They're going to protect the government revenue, if not increase the revenue without you knowing about it. But then they'll lie, mislead, and say, but we cut your taxes. This is the goal. And all of this – in spite of the fact that Arkansas takes $7,000, almost $8,000 per person to run our government, when Oklahoma, Texas, and Mississippi and other states around us average $5,000 per person. Why can't we just get within the norms of those states? What's the problem here? We have a bloated state government, and we have anyway. It's just ridiculous. And so, but back to the frenzy. Jan Morgan is contributing to that as well. And do you know why? We just did 15, 20 minutes of evidence is why. I mean, her message getting out to the people, the truth of what's really going on, giving somebody a viable option, and this is really worrying them. This is really bothering them. The county committees having Jan to speak, to say, hey, maybe I'm a better alternative. Maybe I'm going to, that's very worrisome to Asa and the boys. By the way, our weekly Wednesday video is up at Patreon. It's pretty funny. We do compare Asa to a big spender and use a little... Well, you just need to find out for yourself. It is patreon.com. You can become a subscriber, get that Wednesday weekly video for as little as $5 a month to get extra PHP content. We would appreciate it. Partner with us, make our videos better, make our show better, keep us on the air, and keep us growing. When we come back, we'll be talking with Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon. Joey FOIA'd an interesting document about Senator Jake Files and the River Valley Sports Complex and the FBI investigation that's ongoing. They didn't want the document, but now we have it. I tweeted out a little bit of it earlier. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul Harrell 1776. More on this developing story when we come back for hour number 2.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
And do our jobs. Mm-hmm. And part of my job is to help local people out here understand how their lawmakers are doing. When I travel the state, one of the first questions that people ask me when I walk into a church meeting or whatever it is, they ask, well, how's my guy doing? How's our people doing that we elected? And they really want to know. And, you know, up until now, I've had to say, well, pretty good. You know, I think they're doing all right. But now I have a report card, and I can say, well, here's how they voted on the issues that were important to us.
Yeah.
You tell me how you think they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's as objective as it can possibly be because it's just how they voted. It's not how pretty they are or how good a friend they are or how much they may have helped us. You know, and you know, some of this I'm kind of looking at, well, could we do it better next time? For example, State Representative Mark Lowry, good friend of mine, sponsored 5 good homeschool bills and got them all passed. Well, he got credit for how he voted on those, just like everybody else did, but he didn't get any extra credit because he sponsored the bills.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I had a state representative that sponsored a bill for us. He probably should have had points taken off, Paul, because he did such a poor job. Never ran the bill, never even tried. And so a lot of that becomes subjective there.
Is this one of those guys that, you know, had to check with the governor first and then kind of abandoned the effort?
I'm afraid he checked with the governor was his problem.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's just you just keep, and that's one of the reasons I love how honest you are about how that is what has been going on. You mentioned earlier, you know, some of the criticism that you've received maybe because, you know, one politician knows that he's way more conservative than maybe another politician who had got a higher score than he is. And I just want to reiterate, you know, there are some folks down there who are big talkers. And, you know, I don't mind you being a big talker. I talk for a living. But, you know, it's not just about, you know, wearing your social values on your sleeve and being outspoken. Again, this is actually how you voted. And so that's, I think, in some degree, this scorecard is maybe a mirror, and these legislators don't like the reflection that they're seeing.
Well, it's a little bit like a football game. You know, some people talk big and they play big. You know, they can make the plays. Other people talk big and then they get on the field, it's like, well, you're kind of average, you know. And just because you talk big doesn't mean that you're always going to be able to measure up to, you know, an A standard or top of the line or whatever. And so a lot of people will very quickly tell you, oh, I'm the most conservative guy in the legislature. I'm the most conservative gal in the House of Representatives, whatever. And maybe they are. But let's look at how you voted, and let's just see, you know, if you really are or not.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm quick to point out, this is not the only way to evaluate a lawmaker. Any evaluation is going to be flawed. It's going to fall short. There are probably 4 or 5 scorecards out there right now. They all, including ours, fall in some measure short of telling everybody what all they need to know about a particular lawmaker. Mm-hmm. But it's an important tool for people to have.
Yeah.
That they can look at that and put that with everything else that they know and try to come up with a reasonable evaluation. How is my guy doing?
Yes.
So, to answer that question, how's my guy doing?
And I think, you know, the interesting part is, you know, you have scorecards like yours, social issues. You have scorecards maybe like kind of for commerce, economic issues. And, you know, you have people that are going to criticize that regardless. But the common theme going back to this idea that we have to check with the governor, I feel like there's a lot of crossover there. And I said on Friday that with that mentality of the legislature to not be as independent and to constantly check with the governor, some of their scores that they're upset with now that are affecting them personally, it might be because they're not being independent. They're not thinking for themselves and instead listening to the executive branch. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, and it's not just the governor. They have to check with House leadership, Senate leadership, maybe some lobbying group sometimes. But please understand, this is not true with all the people in the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of wonderful, independent-minded folks out there that are going to vote their convictions. And I thank God for them every single time that they do that. But it is disappointing when you see people that you know have good convictions, or at least you think they do, but they lose sight of that when they get out there and somebody in leadership tells them to do otherwise. And that's what's disappointing. And so, to me, Paul, the greatest
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is hour number 2. My name is Paul. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Joe, in our Wednesday Weekly, what did I call that, Asa, the intersection of socialism and, what did I say? Or the intersection of Medicaid expansion lane and...
it was economic development lane.
And Medicaid expansion Boulevard. Yeah. They're like the... It's like they're like the Spock and Kirk, you know, with the goatee, in that one mirror. Yeah, evil Spock and evil Kirk. Yeah, that's who they are. All right. So hey, welcome back to the program. We've got Fort Smith attorney Mr. Joey McCutcheon is on the line. Joey, welcome back to the program, sir.
Hey, Paul, glad to be on.
Yes, sir. So first off, I've got this document here, Joe. I believe. Do you have this? You have this pulled up into the PDF file, the PDF program. And there's a few things. First of all, this is an internal audit draft report from the city of Fort Smith, isn't this, Joey?
Yeah, it's an internal audit draft report. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
A draft report.
And it has to do with the city's participation in the River Valley Sports Complex, which, if you don't know what that means, it basically just means a big part of this massive scandal that has to do with Jake Files, who is presumably under investigation, FBI investigation. He's mentioned in a sworn FBI affidavit as committing wire fraud, in order to execute a search warrant. And so I want you to walk me through this. I have, for example... I have an email as a part of this, an FOIA release that you filed because you're like Captain FOIA, Joey. I mean, you really do stand up for the people, with this law. I've got an email from Tracy Shockley. She's the City of Fort Smith internal auditor. I have attached the draft report about the River Valley Sports Complex. This is on the agenda for item number 2. Please remember, it's a draft report, should not be dispersed without a discussion with the internal auditor, and it becomes a final report. Now, what made you, Joey, because we're going to get to the findings here in a minute, but what made you, Joey, FOIA this particular document?
Well, I found out through the grapevine that there was a what I would characterize as a secret meeting. On October 4th, an audit committee meeting, I have asked for notice of any and all meetings of our Board of Governors or our Board of Directors, and I didn't get notice of this meeting, and I read about it in a media release, and I go to look at the city calendar to see if this was on the city calendar. It wasn't on the city calendar, and then I find out later through a little legwork that actually the audit was handed out in this meeting, and then it sounded like they got nervous and they said, well, we better, since this is a draft, we better hand it back in. So I actually filed a Freedom of Information Act open meeting complaint against the city. I have now actually dismissed that because after talking to various media members, they received notice of this a month before the actual meeting. I mean, that is contrary to any notice that has ever been given on any meeting. Actually, before I filed the suit, I talked to several of the media groups around. They said we didn't get notice. Then they go start looking back after I filed a lawsuit, and they saw a month before that they had received this notice. Is that just somebody being timely, or is that somebody trying to deceive? I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
so I FOI'd the draft report of this because it's been something that the citizens want to know about this fraud, and it's clearly fraud and corruption.
Well, if they pass out the document at a public meeting and then they get nervous and like, oh, we take it back up. I mean, come on now, you're going to get FOA'd if you do something like that. I mean, why don't they want that to get out to the public? So, have you had a chance to read the document, Joey?
I have. I've had a chance to read it. I haven't had a chance to study it and go through it like I will, but have had a chance to read it. And yes.
So as far as like new information, new findings, I mean, this is the River Valley Sports Complex. This has to do with Senator Jake Files. Has to do with the fact that he secured government grant GIF money to the city of Fort Smith on his direction and then had the city of Fort Smith give it to his employee. The FBI affidavit said then Jake Files instructed his employee to go open a bank account because he was overdrawn, get all of the money out, $26,000, I think, that's off the top of my head, and then give it to Jake Files. I mean, it was just out, and then he paid his employees and pocketed the rest. And then this is just the tip of the iceberg. He falsified the bids with the city of Fort Smith with other contractors who are now on record saying we never sent bids to the city of Fort Smith. All of this to comply with the law. So this is an audit about what went wrong with this project and the city of Fort Smith. What do we know? What does this new document tell us, Joey?
Well, what it tells you is that at best, this is a good old boy system where if you're a state senator and you know the board, then you don't have to provide insurance. You don't have to have a performance bond. You don't have to have a marketing plan. And, you know, this was brought to the attention of this board midway in this project before about another $600,000 or so was spent of taxpayer dollars. It was brought to their attention by a local family who was, in essence, defrauded by Senator Files, and they proceed forward. Now it's also coming out that our deputy city administrator, before this gift money was given out, there was a concern expressed regarding passing out this $29,000 of gift money, and they proceed anyway. So it goes from all the way from Senator Files down to the city board, and questions need to be answered. And thank goodness we've got FOIA, we've got a transparent, we've got the strongest FOIA law at least right now. Now, as you know, in the last legislative session, our FOIA laws were under attack. At least 10 FOIA bills were filed, which would have gutted our transparency laws.
Mm-hmm.
But another related issue. Now we learn also in Fort Smith that Representative Matt Pitch has over the last 8 years has collected $700,000 as a consultant while he's also serving in the legislature. And now we're learning that at least one expert, Eric Lind, has said that it's a waste of money.
Yeah.
And
almost $700,000 on a port concept that hasn't ever come to fruition. And then it's I don't know. It's almost like businessmen in Fort Smith. There must be something in the water there, Joey. I mean, come on. You got Jake Files, who, if he is in fact innocent, he's the most unlucky businessman in the history of the world. You know.
Well, I mean, I think taxpayers across this state should be tired of being the cash cows for our state legislators. You know, we seem to have this. We know that Michael Lamoureux, former Senate pro tem of the Senate, took $120,000 to be the consultant for the Faith and Freedom Coalition.
Yeah.
Again, that's what Gilbert Baker was, and we know that Gilbert Baker was tied into the Mike Maggio scandal.
Yeah, the bribe
where
to
nursing
the judge.
homeowner lowered, or the Judge Maggio lowered a jury verdict from $5 million to $1 million. You know, we also know, Paul, that Senator Files took $80,000 from nursing homeowner Michael Morton's business partner, David Norsworthy, and is yet to say whether that was a loan, whether that was a gift, or whether that was a bribe.
Yeah.
But what we do know is it was 1 week after tort reform was filed in Little Rock in 2014.
And you know what's interesting about that? I mean, that certainly is, but to the Michael Morton, David Norsworthy connection, until Michael Morton was implicated, not charged, but implicated in this bribe to a judge to lower a jury verdict, he was serving on a particular nursing home board that the governor appoints. Obviously, he resigned. You know, he had to get out of that. I mean, that's too much public heat. Well, so Asa Hutchinson then appoints David Norsworthy to fill the slot Michael Morton used to fill, and now we find out he's given $80,000 to Jake Files. It's just, it never stops. I mean, it's like they always find a way to protect the status quo, it seems. Before you go on, Joey, we're talking with Joey McCutcheon. He's Fort Smith attorney. He FOI'd a document we're in possession of. You see it there on your screen if you're watching at Facebook Live or paulharrell.com or YouTube. The last paragraph says that the audit department was not provided with all requested documents, invoices, and receipts concerning Jake Files and this whole debacle. Additionally, this draft report may not have identified all exceptions noted during the audit, only the material deficiencies at this time. It is likely that additional work or the availability of all documents to the audit department would result in the identification of other significant issues, including possible violations of the law. However, since federal law enforcement agencies are now involved in investigating the project, there would appear to be little or no benefit from the IA expending additional time on this project. Now, when I tweeted this particular photo of the document, Joey, out, I tweeted something along the lines of, Files isn't turning over receipts. Looks like the city of Fort Smith is looking to the FBI for justice. However, just to not spend any more time on this, there's also the speculation, and I'd love to get your response to this. Is there any way that maybe there's somebody in the city government of Fort Smith that might get implicated in some activities that are, not in confines with legality when the FBI finally does release their findings, when the Justice Department finally releases what they're going to do with all this?
Well, no, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. We've just gotten this audit report, but what we do know is there are multiple red flags. There were multiple times when numerous city directors could have stood up and said, wait, why isn't this work being done? I mean, was nobody at all reviewing this project? And why would the city of Fort Smith pass the buck to the federal government? I mean, where are the feds with all this corruption that's occurring across this state? Another case, Paul, that we have, Ecclesia. I believe it's November 7th, we'll have a hearing on Ecclesia where certain legislators gave $700,000 of taxpayer money to a private college. And, of course, we know there's been 2 indictments of legislators on that, and wondering, what other legislators are going to be indicted. And it goes and then when you see, again, all of these, you see all the special interest that's going on here, and then you see something like SJR 8, which is the so-called tort reform bill, which would put a price tag on the value of human life at $500,000. And I mean, it's classic government overreach. And we as conservatives know that we'd rather have local people listening to the facts, making those decisions. And you just wonder. I mean, Senator Files gets $80,000 from Michael Norsworthy. It seems to me that depending on what happens here, how valid is a referred amendment to our Constitution that's going to put a price tag of $500,000 on the value of a human's life, whether they're quadriplegic, whether it's a wrongful death.
Yeah.
It just really makes you sick, because we know the political atmosphere in Little Rock, the sway that special interests have down there, and it's really sickening that the little guy, the taxpayer, is taking a bath.
Industry-specific tort reform. I mean, that's essentially what we'll be voting on next November, limiting attorneys' fees, which I disagree with, allowing the legislature to have controls of rules of evidence in a courtroom. I mean, you talk about special interest. I don't trust these people at all, Joey, and I know you don't either. It's pretty strange, but you mentioned, where is the FBI? I want to go back to that. Where is the FBI in all this corruption? Obviously, they've been here. Okay, obviously they're involved with the Woods case. They were involved with Mike and Neil pleading on the kickbacks they were receiving, and how all that implicated the consulting firms. All that implicated Ecclesia College and everything else. They're obviously involved with Jake Files. They executed a search warrant for his laptop, for his cell phone, and in doing that, in the affidavit, they spelled out everything he's done, exact check amounts, deposits, bank accounts, all of that stuff. Contractors saying we never sent the bids. So they have done the work. The question is, number one, are they finished? And number two, will a sane, justice-minded prosecutor pursue this? And I know that you're an attorney, and I know there's no way to predict what the FBI is going to do, but people keep telling me that it's only a matter of time before the shoe drops, and they're telling me it's not just Mike and Neil, it's not just John Woods, it's not just Jake Files, but other sitting senators and state representatives who are going to go down with this. Have you heard anything like that? And where is the FBI in your opinion on this?
Don't know. I would assume that they're going through all their checks and balances and going through the process, and sometimes it takes a while. I mean, just today we see that Mr. Maggio has appealed to the Supreme Court, and so how does that affect? I mean, I think there's people that still think that Michael Morton, nursing home owner Michael Morton, should be prosecuted, and there should be more related to that. But certainly, based upon these documents that we're seeing, the affidavit that came out on Senator Files, and the fact that he will not resign.
Won't resign.
I mean, I'm calling on him today to resign. I am his constituent, and he will not speak to me. He will not return calls. I wonder where he is, because he is not serving his constituents, and that's not a good thing. Especially when you're taking $40,000 of taxpayer money to be performing a job. And I also think on this intermodal project, again, that Senator Pitch, I think there needs to be an audit on that. There needs to be maybe a forensic audit on all of these projects, because it's just like that there isn't it just seems like that our government, it seems that there is more money out there than they know what to do with. We know how much money we're spending in comparison to other states, and we want to act like we're cutting taxes, and come on.
Yeah. It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's just like there's all this money floating around out there, and until you cut that off at the spigot, you're going to continue to have these same problems. And again, we've got to shine the light of day on all these transactions, on all these legislators. And again, there are good legislators, so don't get me wrong. I'm not indicting every legislator, but it is so clear that they are forming. I mean, I'd like to see an investigation on how many of these legislators have consulting jobs, have formed these LLCs, and you don't know who's giving money to them, how much money they're giving to them. They have some minimal reporting requirements.
Yeah,
and it's just it's a big problem, and at least the appearance of impropriety. Is there.
Well,
and certainly in Senator Files' case, I mean, the evidence is overwhelming.
And the Arkansas Republican Party hasn't called on his resignation either, and so that's a blemish on them, and that's on them too. So, Joey McCutcheon, we're out of time, sir. Fort Smith attorney, I appreciate it. Thank you for this valuable information, and hopefully the prosecution of these of what's obvious is going to move forward, and who knows what's behind the scenes. So, appreciate it, Joey.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
All right, folks, the Liberty Machine rolls on. Back in a minute.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. If all men are created equal, that's final. If they are endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights, that's final. If governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, that's final. No advance, no progress can be made beyond these propositions. If anyone wishes to deny their truth or their soundness, the only direction in which he can proceed historically is not forward but backward, toward the time when there was no equality, no rights of the individual, and no rule by the people.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
Came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then,
are you tired of having to fight the crowds at mega stores just to
Paul
save money
Harrell,
grocery shopping?
weekdays
Well, no
from 4
more
to 6.
bills.
Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Threat to what we're trying to get done, which is to create a society in which life is honored and religious freedom flourishes and so forth and so on, and morality is honored. The greatest threat to that is not the ACLU or Planned Parenthood or the courts even or the liberal media. It's people who campaign one way and tell you how conservative they are, and then when they get elected, they put on a jersey maybe for the other team, or they just don't do much. They just kind of sit there and forget about all those campaign promises. This is one tool that people can use to see, did my lawmaker keep his promises? Mm-hmm. And if it helps people do that, then that serves everybody's best interest, I think.
We're talking with Jerry Cox. He's the president of the Family Council Action, and he came on last week to talk about the scorecard, and now there's been some fallout. Just we're talking about maybe the people that are criticizing. I really appreciate the conversation. The only person that I know of, Jerry, who has publicly criticized not just the Family Council, but the other scorecards that are out there, Senator Jim Hendren, who said on Twitter that he would like for groups like the Family Council to disclose their donors, and I'm not sure if he's doing that so he could maybe try to discredit your scorecard or discredit your organization. But what are your thoughts about the majority leader of the Senate, Jim Hendren, effectively saying, hey, private citizens should be revealed in who they're supporting politically?
Well, that's bad. I mean, for anybody to say that would be a good idea, I think they need to stop and think. They are the government. They're an elected official. They're funded with tax dollars. They're spending our tax dollars. So they're the ones that are supposed to be transparent for all of us to look in and root around in their business, because it's our business. We're private. These other groups are private. And if the government thinks that it has a right to come over here to my organization and somehow force me to publish my donor list, then what's next? Are they going to go down to First Baptist Church that might distribute this report card and make them publish all the people that donate to First Baptist Church? And what business would that be of theirs in the first place? And would that change the way their vote is reported if okay, so let's say I did publish my donor list. It doesn't change the report card one bit, not a bit, because their votes are the same whether I publish my list of donors or not. So I'm not sure.
The Paul Harrell Program.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Man, was something wrong with our brakes there? Don't know really what happened there, but we are rejoined with everybody, so that's good. Phone number, call us or text us. That number, 870-275-9799. That's 870. Sorry, I had an eyelash. 275-9799. Joe It is now time for the weekly Conduit for Action quiz. There it is. Now, over at conduitforaction.org, when you're there, make sure you subscribe to receive the new posts. Now, when you take their weekly quiz, you subscribe to their email list anyway. I mean, you can at the bottom of that. Speaking of that, hey, go back real quick. Go back to the CFA page because we haven't actually covered this yet. Scrolling down there, this is a great new article. Good intent, but a bad gun bill. Support Act 746 instead. That I'll come back to that here in just a minute. Okay, back to the quiz. Knowledge is power. Arkansas Government 101. This has to do with the judicial branch of the government. So we kind of had you've made 100 the last 3 weeks, haven't you, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. 100%. So things are really on the line now. The judicial branch is one of 3 branches of Arkansas government. The judicial branch is comprised of the civil and criminal court systems. The role of the judicial branch is to apply and interpret the law, but not to make the law. Take this quiz below and learn the structure and practice of the Arkansas judicial system. Number 1, what is the highest court in the Arkansas judicial branch, Joe? What do you think?
Okay, so it's definitely not the district court or the Court of Appeals.
Okay, not district court or Court of the Appeals.
Because I did take a couple of law classes.
Yeah, so, I mean, let me give you, A, Arkansas District Court, Arkansas Circuit Court, Arkansas Court of Appeals, or Arkansas Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's definitely, okay, so when I was reading these, I saw Arkansas Circuit Court. The first thing I thought of...
Do you really not know this?
No,
You're not radio vamping, are you?
It's the Supreme Court, but when I saw the Circuit Court, I thought of the Circuit Court like...
I thought you were just vamping.
No, the main Circuit Court in our... what is it called?
Judicial system?
Yeah, like the big one.
Dana Carvey had a good
I forget
long time ago. You know SNL David Carney? He had
I know Dana Carvey.
He had a stand-up special a long time ago, and he was like, you can't even say the word judicial system. Just saying the word judicial system, you sound like you're intoxicated. And he has his whole thing.
System.
He was like, it's not me, it's the judicial system. It's not me, it's the judicial system. I'm innocent, it's the judicial system. All right, so question number 2. How many justices are on the Arkansas Supreme Court? 3, 5, 7, or 9?
This one I'm going to actually off the top of my head, but I'm going to assume it's 9 because that's how many Supreme Court justices we have in the big Supreme Court of the country.
So 9 Supreme Court justices, you say. All right, question number 3. How many votes does it take to have a majority opinion from the Arkansas Supreme Court?
5.
Okay, the answer is 3, 4, 5, or 7.
Well, if the answer is 9, based off of what I gave in the last question, the majority is 5.
So consistency. All right, so question number 4. What is the legal effect, pending any appeals, of a majority opinion of the Arkansas Supreme Court? A, the ruling only sets a legal precedence if the legislature signs off on the decision in a majority vote of legislators. B, the ruling sets a legal precedent and is the law of the land in Arkansas. C, the ruling is simply an opinion and people and government actors can choose to follow it if they want. D, the ruling must be signed by the U.S. Supreme Court before setting any legal precedence. A, B, C, or D?
See, this is the one.
C. Your answer is C.
No, that's not.
That's
my
not.
answer.
No, your answer is not.
No,
C.
my answer is.
No, what?
My answer is D.
D.
But I don't know much about the Supreme Court, to be honest, like and how things function. Like I don't know much detail on it.
All right. Well, selecting D. All right. Let's see what happens. We'll go back over these questions if you missed any. Question number 5. How are justices on the Arkansas Supreme Court selected? A, appointed by the governor. B, appointed by the president. C, elected by the Arkansas legislature. Or D, elected by the people.
Is Sean Womack a Supreme Court justice? Or is he just a judge?
So you're wanting to get a lifeline here.
Yeah, I'm asking a question. I can't remember.
So if I answer this, I know what you're going here.
Yeah.
Yes, Sean Womack is
I know my answer.
A Supreme Court justice.
I know my answer.
So what is the answer?
Well, the answer is elected by the people.
Okay.
But there are certain people who want it to be appointed by the governor.
That's true. The governor himself wants that.
He tried really hard for
because
that.
his candidate's lost. That's called sour grapes. Number 6. Who is the current Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court?
I don't know this.
A. Sean Womack. B. Bill Howard Brill. C. Dan Kemp. Or D. Courtney Goodson.
I'm going to go with Sean Womack because I recognize the name Dan Kemp as well, but Sean Womack is what I'm going with.
All right. So you're going to, I mean, that's really what you're doing.
I don't know the answer to this. I honestly don't know the answer to this.
Okay. You're going with Sean Womack just because it's the only name that you know on the Arkansas Supreme Court.
I recognize Dan Kemp as well. We've talked about it on the program, but I don't know, so I'm just going to go with.
All right. You have already subscribed. Number 7, you have subscribed to CFA's email list, and you do live in the town of Jonesboro.
I probably got like a D on this one.
Joe.
I got a 0. Wow. Well, only 2 of them are scored.
That may be. I'm not really sure.
Well,
let's see here. All right. Scrolling up.
Okay, so I definitely got the second one wrong, and if I got the second one wrong, I got the third one wrong.
Yeah.
Because this my third question answer was based off of my answer for the second question.
Yeah. All right. So you got the first one right. There's something wrong with the scoring here, and this will be good. This will get fixed now. But what is the highest court in Arkansas judicial branch? It is the Arkansas Supreme Court. It's question number 1. Question number 2, how many justices are in the Arkansas Supreme Court? The answer, you picked 9. The actual correct answer is 7, which would obviously change the next question, which would, how many votes you have to have. So, obviously, a majority of 7 would be 4.
Yeah.
And then, listen, what is the effect of pending any appeals of majority opinion on Arkansas? You marked the ruling must be signed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
For some reason, when I read that,
because it's U.S. Supreme Court. You see that?
Yeah. That
alone.
That one tripped me up.
That
US
alone
Supreme
is okay. So the ruling sets a legal precedent and is the law of the land in Arkansas. That would have been the correct question.
Whoever wrote this
answer.
question, excellent job.
They
tripped me up on that.
I know, right? They're doing a good job.
Yeah, excellent job.
Scroll down here. What else do we have?
We only have 2 questions.
All right, hang on a second. Let me see here.
Can I go back?
Number 5, you got right.
Which was
elected by the people.
Yep.
And number 6, you got wrong.
Is it Dan Kemp?
It is Dan Kemp as the Chief Justice.
Of course, that's who is the one other name I recognize.
Yeah, we'll get an updated score for you, Joe. I'm not really sure why this survey did this. Had a little hiccup here.
So did I get the first one correct?
The Supreme. Yeah, you got number 1 right. You got number 2 wrong. You got number 3 wrong. You got number 4 wrong. You got number 5 right, and you got number 6 wrong. So
did I only get 2 correct?
Not good. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's
not good, Joe.
Yeah, no, I didn't do very well.
You broke your streak, 100 for 3 weeks in a row.
When it was about any kind of court system, especially just like a state court system, I knew I was going to get messed up on that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what? A lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know about the judicial branch at all. The judicial system. A lot of people don't know.
But so whenever I was reading the first question, what is the highest court in Arkansas in the state? When it said circuit court, I was thinking of the Circuit Court of Appeals, where our district group thing, I forget what this is, our circuit. I think we're the 8th Circuit.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, the federal.
The federal circuit, which is the headquarters for our circuit, is in St. Louis. If I'm
we'll
not mistaken.
Take the quiz, and we're going to get. I've got. There'll be somebody working on this momentarily. Why it didn't score properly. The only thing you did make sure to select those, right? You selected everything.
Yeah, I selected everything.
I was just saying, maybe if you skip some, they only did the ones that you. But anyway. All right, let's go to let's go Conduit for Action real quick, and let's check out this newest commentary here. It has to do with a bad gun bill. Okay, these are not the ones that we've talked about before. This is written by Mr. David Ferguson. It says, good intent but a bad handgun bill. Support 746 instead. He writes, today I look at a handgun bill being proposed by Senator Trent Garner. But my primary focus is on the need to protect constitutional carry under Act 746 of 2013 and on why there is an urgent need for Attorney General Leslie Rutledge to correct an error in her opinion on Act 746. The Attorney General erroneously assumed the existence of a concealed handgun law meant the law prohibited you from carrying a concealed handgun without a license. A review of that law shows no such prohibition. The fact that Senator Gardner drafted legislation in an attempt to help domestic abuse victims obtain a temporary concealed handgun license is proof that crime victims are endangered by the cloud put over Act 746 by the Attorney General opinion. Parts of this article are lengthy, but that is by necessity. Handgun owners need to have all the facts if they are going to help protect the rights of Arkansans to constitutional carry. Part 1. Let's look at Senator Gardner's proposed bill. He's a Republican. Senator Gardner, they write, wants to help victims of domestic abuse to protect themselves. Now, first of all, let's say that's great. I mean, that's something that we can all get behind, right? That's very admirable. The issue comes is like, okay, is this really a problem? If we'll just look at what the law says, it's not near as much of a problem. Under his legislation, when a victim of domestic abuse, I'm not saying domestic abuse isn't a problem, I'm saying the prohibitions to carrying aren't really an issue here. Under his legislation, when a victim of domestic abuse requests an order of protection, the victim could also ask the judge for a temporary concealed handgun license. While Gardner's intent may be good, David Ferguson writes, the bill works against the Second Amendment rights in Arkansas, not only the rights of domestic abuse victims, but all Arkansans. Senator Gardner can still be instrumental in helping domestic abuse victims protect themselves, but his bill does not fit in Arkansas. Other states have considered similar legislation. Why? Because under their laws, a person may have to wait a significant time before being allowed to carry a handgun. Consider Carol Brown, 39, of New Jersey, who had a protective order against a former boyfriend. To protect herself, she applied for a New Jersey license to carry a handgun. Months passed, and while she was still waiting for a permit, her former boyfriend stabbed her to death. Protecting domestic abuse victims is a praiseworthy goal. However, Senator Gardner made a mistake I have seen other freshman legislators make in the past. He saw legislation from other states and assumed the same legislation would fit in Arkansas. It doesn't. Arkansas protects our right to bear arms better than the states where the legislation has been considered. In those states, the legislation was filed to chip away at their state's restrictions on the right to bear arms, such as waiting periods and the need for a gun permit. Under Gardner's legislation, a domestic abuse victim who applies for a protective order could also apply for a temporary 45-day concealed carry permit, and, if granted, the victim must pay the license fee. It would only be a temporary measure, and at the end of the 45-day period, the domestic abuse victim is expected to get a regular license by paying for a training course, paying the license fee, and complete other requirements needed for the regular license. It kind of reminds me of the fact that there's a temporary hunting license that you can go get for 1 year, as long as you're hunting with somebody who has the hunting safety. So you can go get a hunting, or you can get it's a permit that for like a year gets you around in Arkansas, around getting to take hunter safety, as long as you're hunting with somebody who knows what they're doing. And then you got to take the hunting safety class after a year in order to, to continue and that sort of thing. Kind of reminds me of that situation. Under Act 746 of 2013, David Ferguson writes, you can no longer be penalized for carrying a handgun unless you are carrying it with the intent of employing the handgun unlawfully against a person. Today, in Arkansas, a domestic abuse victim can purchase a gun and carry it out of the store without needing permissions or paying fees. Gun control advocates think Act 746 only means you can open carry. But as I will show, David Ferguson writes, that view is not supported by the law. Unfortunately, Senator Gardner's bill would likely make some domestic abuse victims think they must go through the court, jump through hoops, and pay fees in order to have a gun to protect themselves. Now, that's actually doing the complete opposite of what the original intent is. And so often that's what happens with government, folks. The government steps in to try to fix a problem, and in this case, they might actually hurt the situation because people think that they've got to check in with mother government in order to exercise their right to defend themselves. The bill would add confusion in light of freedoms protected by Act 746. In addition, if a restrictive bill like this one is passed, it may be used by gun control advocates as an argument to limit Act 746. Part 2, a better course for Senator Gardner. I would encourage Senator Gardner, David Ferguson writes, to drop his well-meaning but confusing legislation and instead support Act 746 by encouraging Attorney General Rutledge to reconsider the issue of carrying a handgun without a license. As I will discuss later, it is evident the Attorney General's opinion, which says you must have a license, is based on a false assumption and not supported by the law. If the Attorney General fails to correct the opinion, then Senator Garner should support the efforts of Senator Terry Rice, Senator Linda Collins Smith, and Representative Marcus Richmond. Senator Rice sponsored and Senator Linda Collins Smith and Representative Richmond co-sponsored Senate Bill 585 of 2017, which would have cleared up confusion created by the Attorney General's erroneous opinion that you must have a license to carry a concealed handgun. Senator Garner is well aware of their legislation because he is one of the 8 members of the Senate Judiciary Committee where the bill was assigned but failed to get approval. Here is what SB 585 said, and this is what the Attorney General should have said from the beginning concerning the concealed handgun law. Quote, unlicensed carry, not prohibited. This subchapter does not prohibit a person from carrying a handgun without a license to carry a concealed handgun under this subchapter, whether openly or concealed, if he or she is not otherwise prohibited by the laws of this state from possessing a firearm in the state as permitted by the United States Constitution. The ability of citizens to carry a concealed handgun, David Ferguson writes, is not some strange notion. The right to carry a concealed handgun without a license is even protected in Bernie Sanders' home state of Vermont. Part 3. Why the Attorney General was wrong about Act 746 and concealed carry. Basic facts. Prior to Act 746 of 2013, if you carried a handgun for self-defense, you could be potentially charged with the offense of carrying a weapon since the law prohibited carrying a weapon for the purpose of using it against another person. That pretty much is the reason for carrying for self-defense. The law was passed in 1975 as part of the lengthy Arkansas Criminal Code and has been amended several times. Here's how the offense of carrying a weapon, Arkansas Code, read prior to 2013. It said this: a person commits the offense of carrying a weapon if he or she possesses a handgun, knife, or club on or about his or her person in a vehicle occupied by him or her or otherwise readily available for use with the purpose to employ the handgun, knife, or club as a weapon against a person. The law went on to provide some exemptions to the prohibition. In 1995, the legislature passed the concealed handgun law. Arkansans who wanted to carry a handgun for self-defense found this law as a way to carry a handgun without worrying about being charged with the offense of carrying a weapon. The concealed handgun law, as it reads now, is included at the bottom of the article. Then came Act 746 of 2013, substantially changed the offense of carrying a weapon with the goal of protecting your Second Amendment rights. Under Act 746, you are not guilty of the offense unless the prosecutor proves you were carrying the handgun for the purpose to unlawfully use it against another person. No longer do you risk being an offender by carrying a handgun for self-defense. Here's how the law now reads. A person commits the offense of carrying a weapon if he or she possesses a handgun, knife, or club on or about his or her person in a vehicle occupied by him or her or otherwise readily available for use with a purpose to attempt to unlawfully employ the handgun, knife, or club as a weapon against a person. Attorney General Rutledge was asked to give an opinion on the effect of Act 746. One of the issues addressed was whether changes made by 746 meant you could carry a concealed handgun without a license, since the offense of carrying a weapon only applies if you're carrying the handgun for the purpose to unlawfully use it. In the Attorney General opinion, the Attorney General said, a person may not lawfully carry a concealed handgun in public without a properly issued concealed carry license. She went on, I believe this necessarily follows from the concealed carry licensing scheme that predates Act 746, and that, in my opinion, was unaffected by Act 746. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge has a reputation for thorough research. But an incorrect assumption led to a significant error here. Errors happen, and even the courts have a procedure to rehear and issue and correct errors. The Attorney General based the opinion on the mere existence of a concealed handgun license and then made the incorrect assumption that it must prohibit something. An examination of the concealed handgun law clearly shows the opinion is wrong. There is nothing in the concealed handgun law to prohibit a person from carrying a concealed handgun without a license. People applied for a license not because of any restriction in the concealed handgun law. People applied for a license to avoid being charged with carrying a weapon, as it read prior to 2013. Representative John Payton requested an Attorney General's opinion on some related issues under Act 746, but in early 2016, the Attorney General declined to answer questions, saying the issues were subject to litigation, and the policy of the Attorney General's office is to not respond when an issue is subject to litigation. In 2017, the legislature added to the concealed handgun law another class of license referred to as enhanced carry. The enhanced carry law is a restrictive law requiring permission to carry a concealed handgun in certain areas that would otherwise be considered a gun-free zone. Although enhanced carry is in the same subchapter of the law, its restrictions have nothing to do with the regular concealed handgun law being discussed here. Why was the Attorney General wrong on this? The concealed handgun law uses the word license and grants exceptions for the license, but the license never represents itself as being exclusive. To assume that it is ignores the history of the law and to ignore the actual text of the concealed carry law. The concealed carry law does not state any prohibition against carrying a concealed handgun without a license. The concealed carry law has no penalty for carrying a concealed handgun law without a license, other than the enhanced carry license, which is not relevant here. A closer analysis of the key words, penalty, permit, possesses, prohibit, and violation, and derivatives of these words in the concealed handgun law does not reveal any instance where the words are used to restrict non-license holders. Again, there's no law that says it's legal, ladies and gentlemen, for you to sip iced tea on your front porch. But there's no law that says you can't. You see what I'm saying? That's the state of Arkansas gun laws. Hey, we're out of time. Check out the rest of the article at conduitforaction.org. Really, really thorough piece by the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research, Mr. David Ferguson. Conduitforaction.org. Back in a minute.
The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group. If you would like information about advertising or supporting the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media Group, call 870-275-9755. Join the fight against big government and advance the preservation of liberty by calling 870-275-9755. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, folks, we're back for a break here. That about wraps up the program. We do appreciate you being with us. This program is available for your viewing or listening pleasure at paulharrell.com for free. That's Paul, Harrell.com for free. Now, while you're there, if you want extra content, click on the tab at the top of the page that says Get Extra Content, and that's going to redirect you to our Patreon page. Our Patreon page is where you can do that. I am in the process of inviting, because for our Paul Harrell Program producer levels, that's $10 a month, you guys get access to those monthly surveys of topics and guests and get to produce the show and help us frame what we're going to do. I've already in the process of inviting certain legislators on, your requests on, and hearing back from them. And so certainly going to let you know whenever we secure those interviews that you guys want us to have. I can't force Jake Files to come on the show, unfortunately. We did get one vote for Jake Files, and can't force that guy to come on the program. But we're going to do our best to get the rest of them on, folks. Thanks so much for being with us. That's all the time that we have for today. And we can't do it without you. Arkansas, I'm telling you, they are really worried about you getting the truth, and we need all ears on deck. We will see you tomorrow Arkansas, be safe.